You have been losing respect your entire life, and you never even noticed the theft. Every time someone mocked you with a smile and you laughed it off to keep the peace, you surrendered a piece of your authority. Every time someone delivered a subtle insult wrapped in humor and you pretended not to notice, you handed them permission to do it again. Every time you tried to explain yourself to someone who had already decided you were beneath them, you gave them the satisfaction of watching you defend your worth. This is the truth most men never realize. Disrespect rarely arrives openly. It hides behind jokes. It disguises itself as sarcasm. It slips into conversations like poison dissolved in wine. And because it is subtle, most men tolerate it. They pretend not to see it. They convince themselves it is harmless. But Machiavelli understood something about human nature that most people refuse to accept. Disrespect is a test. It is a quiet probe into your boundaries, a measurement of how much dignity you are willing to surrender to maintain comfort. And the moment someone realizes you will tolerate subtle disrespect, they do not stop. They escalate. First, it is a small joke at your expense, then a dismissive comment, then public criticism, then, eventually, open disregard. This is how power erodes in slow motion. But tonight, you learn what most men never learn. You learn how powerful men handle hidden disrespect without drama, without shouting, and without losing control. Because the most dangerous man in any room is not the loudest one. It is the one who understands the game being played beneath the surface. Niccolò Machiavelli studied courts filled with smiling enemies and polite betrayals. He watched men destroy each other not through swords, but through reputation, perception, and psychological dominance. And from those observations emerged a ruthless truth. People treat you according to the signals you tolerate. If you tolerate subtle disrespect, you signal weakness. If you punish it strategically, you signal power. The difference between the respected man and the overlooked man is not talent, intelligence, or even strength. It is boundaries. And the first way to handle secret disrespect is something that will surprise most men. Not confrontation, not anger, not arguments. The first weapon is observation. Habit. 1. See the disrespect before anyone else. Does most men miss the moment disrespect begins? They are too busy talking, too busy trying to impress, too busy trying to be liked. But powerful men study behavior. They notice tone, they notice timing, they notice the small smirk that follows a harmless joke. When someone interrupts you repeatedly, that is not an accident. It is dominance signaling. When someone mocks your achievements in front of others, that is not humor. It is status reduction. When someone compliments you and immediately undermines it, you did well. For someone like you, that is psychological positioning. These are not random behaviors. They are power moves. Most people who disrespect you secretly are not brave enough to attack openly. They operate in the shadows of ambiguity. They rely on the fact that you will hesitate to respond because you cannot prove their intent is less than #0. 2 is greater than. But once you learn to see the pattern, their strategy collapses. Machiavelli wrote that the prince must understand deception better than the deceiver. Observation is the foundation of that power. When you begin noticing subtle disrespect, something interesting happens. Your posture changes, your tone changes, your silence becomes heavier. Because once you see the game, you stop reacting emotionally and start responding strategically, and that is when the dynamic begins to shift. But observation alone is not enough. You must follow it with the second habit. Habit 2. Remove the reward they are seeking. Here is something most men never understand about disrespect. The person disrespecting you is not trying to insult you. They are trying to provoke you. They want a reaction. Why? Because reactions create power. When someone makes a subtle jab and you react emotionally, they have just controlled your state. They have pulled your strings like a puppet, and once they know they can trigger you, they will do it again. This is why Machiavelli advised rulers to master their emotional responses. A man who cannot control his reactions can be controlled by anyone. So when someone delivers subtle disrespect, do something that will confuse them. Do nothing. No defensive explanation, no anger, no attempt to correct them. Just silence. Cold, deliberate silence. This silence creates psychological pressure. The human mind expects feedback. When it does not receive it, uncertainty appears. Did the insult land? Did you notice? Are you offended? Are you judging them? That uncertainty begins to disturb them. They start replaying the interaction in their mind. They start wondering if they miscalculated. This is the beginning of psychological dominance. Weak men argue. Strategic men observe and withdraw the reward. And when someone realizes their disrespect does not move you, emotionally, they lose the leverage they thought they had. But there is a deeper level to this strategy, and it leads to the third habit. Habit 3. Change your energy toward them. One of the most powerful signals in human interaction is attention. Attention communicates value. When you give someone warmth, eye contact, laughter, and engagement, you are signaling that they matter. But when someone secretly disrespects you, continuing to give them full attention tells them something dangerous. It tells them their behavior has no consequences. This is where powerful men shift the dynamic. They do not explode. They do not create public drama. They simply reduce access. The tone changes. The enthusiasm disappears. Conversations become shorter. Eye contact becomes neutral. The warmth is gone. To everyone else in the room, nothing dramatic has happened. But to the person who disrespected you, the message is unmistakable. They have been downgraded. Machiavelli understood that status is communicated through subtle signals more than direct statements. A prince did not need to shout to demonstrate authority. He simply withdrew favor. And suddenly, those who once felt comfortable around him became cautious. This is the power of controlled emotional distance. You are not punishing them loudly. You are simply repositioning them in your hierarchy. People feel this shift immediately, and something fascinating happens when they do. Those who secretly disrespected you begin adjusting their behavior. They become more careful with their words, more respectful with their tone, more aware of how you perceive them. Why? Because they feel the risk of losing access, and humans instinctively chase what begins to withdraw. This is psychological gravity. The less attention you give, the more attention they seek. But, make no mistake, not everyone will correct their behavior. Some will continue testing you. Some will escalate their disrespect. Some will attempt to provoke you even harder. And that is where the next levels of Machiavellian strategy begin. Because when observation, silence, and emotional distance are not enough, the game changes. But subtle disrespect rarely ends with a single test. Human beings are creatures of pattern. When someone senses weakness, they repeat the behavior that produced the advantage. And when someone senses resistance, they probe even harder to see if that resistance is real. This is where most men fail. They begin strong. They notice the disrespect. They respond with silence. They create distance. But the moment the pressure increases, they collapse back into emotional reaction. They argue, they explain, they defend themselves. And the moment they do, the psychological balance collapses. Because Machiavelli understood something ruthless about human behavior, people do not respect what they can emotionally control. This brings us to the fourth way powerful men handle hidden disrespect. Habit 4. Let them expose themselves. When someone secretly disrespects you, your instinct is to shut them down immediately. But strategic men do something different. They give the person space to continue. Not because they tolerate disrespect, but because exposure is more powerful than accusation. Imagine someone making subtle jabs at you in a group conversation. Weak men interrupt and defend themselves immediately. But the strategic man simply watches. He lets the person continue. He allows them to reveal their pattern. The jokes become sharper. The tone becomes more obvious. And slowly, the room begins to notice. Now something interesting happens. The disrespectful person believes they are winning because you are not reacting, but in reality, they are digging their own grave. Machiavelli warned leaders about the dangers of impulsive punishment. When you strike too early, you appear insecure. When you allow your opponent to reveal themselves fully, your response becomes justified and devastating. Eventually, the moment arrives. The person crosses the line too clearly to deny. Now the entire room understands what they are doing. And when you finally respond, calmly, precisely, and without emotion, your words carry enormous weight. Not because you shouted, but because everyone has already seen the pattern. You did not attack them. They exposed themselves. This is the art of controlled patience. Powerful men do not rush to defend their reputation. They allow their opponent to destroy their own credibility first. But there is another layer to this strategy that most men never consider. Habit 5. Use strategic humor to flip the power. One of the most effective ways to dismantle subtle disrespect is not anger. It is humor. But not defensive humor. Strategic humor. When someone delivers a disguised insult, they expect one of two reactions. Either you will laugh along and accept the insult, or you will become defensive and emotional. Both reactions give them power. But when you respond with calm humor that reframes the situation, something extraordinary happens. The entire dynamic flips. For example, imagine someone saying, "Wow, you finally did something right." A weak man might defend himself, but the strategic man smiles calmly and says, "Took me a while to catch up to you." The room laughs. But beneath the humor lies something powerful. You did not defend yourself. You redirected the energy. Now the person who tried to lower your status becomes the one slightly embarrassed. Humor disarms aggression, but it also demonstrates confidence. Machiavelli understood that the strongest leaders often used wit as a weapon. A well-placed line delivered calmly could neutralize an opponent faster than open hostility. Because humor communicates something critical. You are not threatened. You are not emotional. You are not affected. And nothing frustrates a subtle aggressor more than realizing their attack failed. But not every situation can be neutralized with humor. Sometimes the disrespect continues. Sometimes the person becomes persistent. Sometimes they attempt to challenge you more openly. And this is where the next strategy becomes essential. Habit 6. Raise your standards of access most. Men think respect comes from confrontation, but in reality, respect often comes from restriction. Powerful men understand something simple. Access is privilege. Your time, your attention, your presence. These are not unlimited resources. They are valuable assets. And when someone repeatedly disrespects you, the most effective response is not anger. It is reduction of access. Conversations become shorter. Invitations stop. Replies become delayed or non-existent. You become busy, unavailable, distant, not dramatically, not aggressively, just gradually. This sends a powerful signal. People begin to realize that their behavior has consequences. Not emotional consequences, practical ones. They lose proximity to you, and humans instinctively chase proximity to those they perceive as valuable. Machiavelli wrote that rulers must control access to themselves carefully. If everyone could reach the prince freely, the prince would lose his mystique. Scarcity creates value, distance creates respect, and when someone realizes their subtle disrespect has pushed them further away from you, they begin adjusting their behavior if they want to regain access. But there is one final level to mastering hidden disrespect, a level that separates ordinary men from truly untouchable men, because sometimes the disrespect is not coming from strangers. Sometimes it comes from people who once had closeness with you, friends, colleagues, even family. And when those individuals continue testing your boundaries, a deeper kind of strength is required. The strength to remove people from your life entirely, without drama, without explanation, and without emotional chaos. And in the final phase of this transformation, you will learn the last two Machiavellian principles that make disrespect almost impossible in your presence. Because once a man masters these final habits, something changes permanently. People stop testing him, not because he demands respect, but because his presence silently enforces it. But there comes a moment in every man's life when subtle strategies are no longer enough. Observation works, silence works, distance works, humor works, restricted access works, but some people will continue pushing, not because they misunderstand you, but because they believe they can still get away with it. And this is where the final transformation begins. Because Machiavelli understood a brutal truth about human nature, people will test your limits until they discover where the wall is. If they never find the wall, they will keep walking forward. This is why the sixth habit exists. Habit 6. Deliver one cold, unforgettable boundary. Most men avoid confrontation because they fear being seen as aggressive. So, they tolerate small acts of disrespect repeatedly, hoping the person will eventually understand. But the opposite happens. Tolerance invites escalation. Machiavelli warned rulers that mercy without limits breeds rebellion. If subjects believe they can break rules without consequence, they will continue doing it. The same law applies in personal power. At some point, a boundary must be delivered. Not emotionally, not dramatically, but clearly, and most importantly, only once. When someone crosses the line after repeated signals, the powerful man does not explode. He does not rant, he does not argue, he simply states the reality of the situation. Calm voice, direct eye contact, minimal words, something like, "Don't speak to me like that again." No explanation, no lecture, just the boundary. Then silence. The room becomes quiet because everyone feels the shift. You did not shout. You did not insult them. But your authority became undeniable. Machiavelli understood that punishment, when necessary, must be swift and unmistakable. A weak response invites further challenge. A decisive response ends the game. And something interesting happens when you deliver a boundary with calm certainty. People immediately re-evaluate you. The ones who secretly disrespected you suddenly become cautious, because they realize something important. You are not the man they thought you were. You are not easily manipulated. You are not easily intimidated. And most importantly, you are not afraid of tension. But even this is not the final level, because the most powerful men in the world rarely need to deliver boundaries more than once. Why? Because they live by the seventh habit. Habit 7. Become the man who cannot be played. With the ultimate defense against hidden disrespect is not confrontation, it is identity. When a man carries himself with quiet certainty, emotional control, and clear standards, people sense it immediately, before a single word is spoken. Machiavelli wrote that reputation is one of the most powerful weapons a leader can possess. When people believe a prince is dangerous to cross, they rarely attempt it. The same applies to personal power. The untouchable man moves differently. He does not chase approval. He does not laugh nervously when insulted. He does not try to please everyone in the room. He observes. He speaks slowly. He reacts rarely. And because of this, something strange happens. People begin adjusting their behavior around him automatically. The jokes stop. The sarcasm disappears. The subtle disrespect fades, not because he demanded respect, but because his presence quietly requires it. This is the final Machiavellian principle. Power is communicated through energy long before it is communicated through words. Weak men attempt to force respect. Strong men embody it. And once you embody it, something extraordinary occurs. People begin testing other men instead of you. They sense the invisible boundary around your presence. They feel the psychological weight of your restraint. And they understand often, without knowing why, that disrespecting you would be a mistake. This is the final transformation. You stop reacting. You stop explaining. You stop trying to prove your worth. Instead, you become a man whose standards are so clear that anyone who crosses them removes themselves from your world automatically. And when that happens, the games disappear. The disrespect disappears. The noise disappears. All that remains is quiet authority, the kind of authority Machiavelli admired most, the kind that does not need to be announced, the kind that simply exists, and the world adjusts to it. If this awakened something in you, then you are already beginning to see the game most men never notice. Power is not loud. It is quiet discipline applied every day. And if you want to master the psychology of power, influence, and silent dominance the way Machiavelli understood it, then subscribe to the channel now. Because the men who understand these principles do not just survive the game of power, they control it.